Well, here we go. Another idiot governor giving his take on the unemployment compensation, but this one says that this is the closest thing to socialism that he's ever seen. Take a look at this.
Tucker, this is about as close to socialism as anything I've seen. The federal government's just taking over, just throwing money at people. I don't know how we're going to spend all of this. That's why we can't. This cannot be done. But we're not going to take that unemployment money to pay people for not working. We got help wanted signs up everywhere.
Okay, first of all, who elected somebody's idiot grandpa? Like, how do these people win races? Oh, that's right. Our political system is incredibly corrupt and money fuels people's campaigns. Sorry, I posed the question. Let's get into what he had to say. So this guy, he's a fucking bimbo. I don't like, this was incredibly hilarious because he basically just said a bunch of nothing, essentially. You know, this is the closest thing to socialism that I think I've ever seen. We got help wanted signs up everywhere, and people don't want to go to work, and they're getting unemployment compensation and whatever. My God, he offered no kind of point that was backed by analytics, empirical evidence, statistics, nothing. All of this is opinion based, and it's still somehow wrong. So let's get into it. He says that, first of all, we have to do the fear mongering over the government. The federal government's taking over. Okay? So you cut the people a couple of checks, give them some unemployment compensation, and all of a sudden the federal government's taking over. You get the child tax credits, and all of a sudden the federal government's taking over. This is the closest thing to socialism that he's ever seen, you guys. That's what he just said. A country without universal health care, a country without free higher education, a country without legalized drugs, let alone legalized marijuana, a country without a living wage, a country that's still fighting endless wars. This is the closest thing that he's ever seen to socialism. Unemployment compensation. Okay. All right. I've said this a million times in the past, and I'll keep saying it because it's so fucking true. These people don't know what these words mean. They don't know what socialism means. They don't know what communism means. They don't know what fascism, neo-fascism, any of this. They don't know what any of this stuff means whatsoever. They just say it as scare words because they think that, you know, that 60-year-old or 70-year-old grandpa sitting at home will hear the word socialism and all of a sudden be against the stimulus checks or some shit or unemployment insurance. This is how they win over their voters. This is how Republicans win over their voters. They just trot out scare words and ridiculous talking points and hope that they can get these fanatical, hyperbolic reactionaries sitting at home on their couch watching bullshit like Tucker Carlson. That's what they do. It's what they do. You know, many people would describe, and I believe this is the correct description of socialism, as the workers in any given society owning the means of production and distribution in exchange. That's what many people would describe as socialism, which is what I also believe is the correct description of socialism. That didn't describe anything that he just put out. Unemployment compensation is the closest thing he's ever seen to fucking socialism. Who is this guy? He says that, how are we going to spend all of this money? How are we going to spend it, bro? How are we going to spend the money? I mean, how are we going to spend it? They've never heard of modern monetary theory. They've never heard of Keynesian economics. They don't know anything other than austerity. Anything other than austerity. Keep shoveling money up to the top 1% while everybody else starves and while the people continue to make poverty wages. And yeah, that's it. That's it. But yet, these people still want to get elected. It's like they don't care about elections. And in fact, as I said in the beginning of the video, they probably shouldn't, because our political system is incredibly corrupt. And as long as they have the money from their donors, they can keep getting elected. And we can keep seeing bullshit like this. And this kind of jargon goes unchallenged on Tucker Carlson's show. Populist my ass. A populist would challenge bullshit like this. No. And it shows you how educated he is about it. You know, raises no questions to what this guy just said whatsoever. He says there are help wanted signs everywhere. places of business wanting people to come work for them. Well, how about you tell those places to raise the wages, and maybe that'd give people a reason to come out and apply for a job. Nobody wants to work for $7.25 or however much an hour. That's not an adequate means of subsistence in order to provide people with lives that they can actually live. He says we're throwing money at people. You know what's funny? So Congress has, I read an article the other day, Congress has, as of now, I believe it's a 50% approval rating. 50%. Do you know how insane that is? Now, a lot of people say like, oh, well, that might be like an outlier or whatever. It doesn't matter. 50% approval rating of Congress. Joe Biden has an approval rating of, I can't remember the exact number. I think it's around like 63% or something like that. Okay? Like a majority of the population approve of how he's handling this pandemic. Why is that? It's because for the first time in a while, people are getting a taste of what the government can actually do for them. They're getting a taste of the good things that the government can do for them. You know, imagine if Biden came in and went full throttle FDR. I mean, his approval rating would be through the fucking roof. I mean, there'd be no complaints from the American. Of course, these people would lose their fucking mind, but the American people would love it because the polls tells us that that's what they want. And this is their response to mild spending and change from Joe Biden. Very moderate. I mean, some would even cringe at the fact of calling it moderate. Some would even call it conservative. You know, those may be to the left of others. But this stuff incites the rage of these insane Republicans that have nothing to promote but austerity and Austrian economics. That's it. That's all they have. How much money do you want to bet that this guy's constituents love the stimulus checks that they got? I wish that a lot of these Republicans would just come out and say what they're against. Like, instead of just, telling us all this bullshit, socialism, whatever, just tell us what you're against. You're against unemployment insurance. You're against the stimulus checks. You're against anything good for the people. You're against higher wages. You're against people having health care. You're against all that shit. And notice. They always have bad things to say about, oh, this is socialism, that's socialism. You want to, God forbid, you want to make some positive arrangements to the healthcare system. God knows that it needs to be nationalized. But let's say you want to lower the Medicare age from 65 to 60. Socialism, communism, they don't want people to have healthcare. I wish that they just come out and say it. But they knows what would happen if they do because, programs like Medicare are incredibly popular. And it's funny because every other developed country has one form or another of universal health care, Medicare for all, a nationalized healthcare system. Many of these same countries have free higher education. Many of these same countries have legalized various drugs, marijuana, what have you. Many of these same countries have a living wage for their labor force. These are all things that Republican politicians, and maybe even some Democrats, would refer to as socialism. But if you take notice, in these respective countries where these things are demonized in America as socialism, they keep getting voted for. And they keep persisting that these programs stay intact. They're not voting out their universal healthcare system when election rolls around in Europe. No, they want to keep that. They like that. They prefer that. So it says something about America, doesn't it? You demonize social programs, but in other parts of the world, they're incredibly popular. They're even incredibly popular here back home. The polls tell us that. I guess that says something, doesn't it? Look, at the end of the day, these people are entirely fanatical and hyperbolic. This isn't socialism. This isn't anything close to it. This is moderate, mild spending by a moderate, mild president.